Have you ever had a family member look you in the eye and try to take the very roof over your children's heads just to cover their own stupid mistakes? That was me, staring at a legal court notice to force the sale of my house, sent to me by my own brother, Julian. My brother had managed to dig himself into a massive financial hole through years of sketchy investments and high-stakes gambling. When our father passed away, leaving us a modest inheritance, Julian didn't just want his half, he demanded mine, too, and when I told him no, he didn't just walk away. He targeted my house. He thought he found a clever little loophole that would force me onto the streets to pay off his bookies. But what he didn't count on was my lawyer, a quiet, polite man who practically turned the legal system into Julian's worst nightmare. Let's back up a bit, because to understand the sheer level of audacity my brother had, you need to understand the dynamic between us. Julian was always the golden child. He was older, louder, and incredibly charming. He was the kind of guy who could crash a rental car and somehow convince the company to give him a free upgrade. Because of this, my parents always bailed him out. Every single time he failed a business venture or lost money, they were there with an open checkbook. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. I worked a stable job in logistics, married my high school sweetheart, and spent years saving up every penny to buy a fixer-upper house. When I bought the house 8 years ago, the bank wouldn't approve the mortgage on my income alone. So, our dad kindly stepped in and co-signed the loan with me. To make things easy, Dad's name was put on the deed alongside mine. For years, I paid every single cent of the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, and the renovations. Dad never paid a dime, and he never wanted to. It was just a formality to help me get on my feet. But then, our father got sick. His passing was incredibly hard on me. I spent his last months visiting him every single day, holding his hand and making sure he was comfortable. Julian? He barely showed up. He was always too busy or dealing with urgent business. Now I know what that business actually was. He was hiding from debt collectors. After the funeral, the estate attorney called us in. Dad had left us a modest inheritance of about $80,000 cash, to be split 50-50. $40,000 each. I was planning to use my share to finally pay off the remaining balance on my mortgage. But before the ink on the estate paperwork was even dry, Julian cornered me in the parking lot. "Leo, I need a favor," Julian said, his eyes bloodshot and anxious. "I'm in a really bad spot. Some very dangerous people are looking for me. I need your $40,000 from the inheritance. I'll pay you back, I swear, but I need it today." I looked at him, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. "Julian, I have a wife and a 7-year-old daughter. That money is going toward our mortgage. I can't just give you my family's future to pay off your bad debts." Julian's face instantly darkened. The fake, charming smile vanished, replaced by a cold, ugly sneer. "Family is supposed to back each other up, Leo," he spat. "If you won't help me, don't complain about what happens next." Honestly, at the time, I thought he was just venting. I thought he'd go ask someone else or finally file for bankruptcy. I didn't think much of it until 2 weeks later, when a process server knocked on my door and handed me a thick stack of legal documents. I opened them, and my stomach dropped. Julian was suing me. Because our dad's name was still on the deed of my house. Julian's lawyer was arguing that Dad's 50% share of the house was part of the deceased estate. And since the estate was to be split 50-50, Julian was claiming he now owned 25% of my home. He was petitioning the court for a partition sale, which is a legal move that forces the owner to sell the property, so the proceeds can be split among the beneficiaries. I was absolutely devastated. My wife was in tears. Our home, the place we had poured our hearts into, the place where our daughter took her first steps, was being targeted by my own brother to pay off his gambling debts. Julian even had the nerve to text me, "Should have given me the cash. Now you're going to lose the whole house. See you in court." I felt completely helpless. I didn't know anything about real estate law. I felt like a sheep being led to the slaughter. But then, a coworker recommended a lawyer named Marcus. Marcus was a small, quiet man with neat gray hair and a very soft voice. He didn't look like a shark, he looked like a high school history teacher. But the moment I explained the situation and showed him the paperwork, something changed in his eyes. He got this tiny, sharp smile. "Your brother thinks he's being very clever," Marcus said, tapping the documents. "But he and his lawyer made two very critical assumptions. And in a court of law, assumptions are a luxury you cannot afford." "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward. "First," Marcus said, "they assumed your father's co-signing made him a tenant in common. But we need to look at the original deed. Second, well, let's just say I like to do a little deep digging into the estate accounts before we enter a courtroom." Marcus told me to go home, hug my wife, and let him do his job. For the first time in weeks, I actually slept through the night. 2 weeks later, we were in the probate court. Julian was there, sitting next to his lawyer. He was wearing a brand new suit probably bought with the expectation of the massive payout he was about to get from my house. He smirked at me as I walked in with Marcus. Julian's lawyer stood up and gave this long dramatic speech about how his client was simply seeking his fair and legal share of his late father's estate, and how the law clearly supported a partition sale of the property. The judge looked over at Marcus. "Does the defense have a response?" Marcus stood up, adjusted his glasses, and spoke in his usual, soft, polite voice. "Your Honor, we have two very simple responses," Marcus said. "First, we would like to present the original deed of purchase for the property in question, signed 8 years ago." Marcus handed a document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "If the court looks at page 3, Marcus continued, you will see that the property was registered under a joint tenancy with right of survivorship, not a tenancy in common. Under the law of this state, when a property is held in joint tenancy, the deceased owner's share does not pass into the estate. It automatically and instantly transfers to the surviving owner. In this case, my client, Leo, Julian's lawyer, froze. He began frantically shuffling through his own papers. The judge looked at the deed, nodded, and looked at Julian's lawyer. "Mr. Davis, did you not review the original deed?" "Your Honor, we believed," the lawyer stammered. "As I said, Your Honor, they assumed," Marcus said softly, not even raising his voice. "But even if they want to argue equity, we have a second, much more pressing matter to present to the court." Marcus pulled out another folder. "While reviewing the estate accounts, we noticed that during the final 3 months of the late Mr. Carter's life, while he was heavily medicated in hospice care, over $45,000 was withdrawn from his personal checking account via online transfers." Marcus looked directly at Julian. "We traced the IP addresses of those transfers. They came directly from Julian's apartment. We also have bank records showing those exact amounts being deposited into Julian's personal account to pay off a known betting agency." Julian's face went from pale to completely green. He looked like he was about to throw up right there on his new suit. "This is not just a civil matter, Your Honor," Marcus said, his voice as calm as a summer breeze. "This is elder financial abuse and grand theft from the estate. We have already prepared a formal filing with the district attorney's office. However, we are willing to settle this today if Julian agrees to a full waiver." The judge looked at Julian, her expression absolutely terrifying. "Mr. Davis, I suggest you take 5 minutes in the hallway with your client, because if this goes to trial, I will personally ensure the state prosecutor receives these files." Julian practically ran out of the courtroom, his lawyer dragging him by the arm. 5 minutes later, they walked back in. Julian looked completely defeated. His hands were shaking so bad he could barely hold the pen. He signed a complete, legally binding waiver. He forfeited his entire share of the cash inheritance to cover my legal fees and to reimburse the stolen funds back into the estate. He also signed a document stating he had absolutely no claim, now or ever, to my house. I didn't have to sell my home. In fact, because of Julian's greed, his $40,000 share of the inheritance was used to pay off the rest of my mortgage. As we walked out of the courthouse, Julian wouldn't even look at me. He was too busy arguing with his lawyer, who was probably wondering if he was ever going to get paid. I turned to Marcus, my eyes watering. I don't even know how to thank you. You saved my family's home. Marcus smiled, shook my hand, and said, "The law is a beautiful thing, Leo. Especially when it's used to protect people who actually deserve it. It's easy to get scared when greedy people try to bully you. They scream, they threaten, and they try to make you feel like you have no choice but to give up. But remember, loudest doesn't mean strongest. Sometimes, all you need is the truth, a little patience, and a really, really good lawyer." So, what do you think? Did Julian get what he deserved, or should I have been more lenient since he is my brother? Let me know in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and revenge, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.